Good morning. We are starting our second edition, I guess, of Talking to Artists. And yesterday was really fun, and I was really happy that we were able to do Helen's from the, hi Kathy. Hey Julie, I see Julie's just joined us. She's our guest for today. So just a couple things I wanted to talk about first is that how much I really have enjoyed it, and it's given me a great opportunity to reach out to artists that I just really like and really have a lot of respect for. So I was trying to figure out my lighting because my bedroom studio upstairs is so hot. I have to be downstairs. Anyway, a couple of really important things. A lot of the people that are here, oh hey Janet, Michelle, lots of people are joining, that's great. So a lot of people that are actually joining, you already obviously know because you are part of, Julie can't hear. Can you guys hear me? Did I screw something up again? Can you guys tell me, can you hear me? Yes, no? Julia can't, so I don't know if that's everybody or if it's just, so people are saying thumbs up. Okay, all right, excellent. First of all, thank you for your patience in this stuff, trying to figure it all out, because, obviously we're still trying to learn. Okay, so people can't hear it, that's great. First of all, I wanted to remind people that the Riverdale Art Walk this year is online. My work is there, I've got some new pieces there. We have over 100 artists participating in the Art Walk. With about 2,000 pieces of art for sale. So I appreciate it's not as much fun as kind of going into the park and things like that, but it's also really a great opportunity still to see some of the work that artists have been producing in their studios and to support the arts community and to fill something in your home. I know a lot of people have reached out to me and they've talked about the fact they're spending a lot more time at home. Looking at their empty walls, and they're not so happy about that, so they're looking to fill it with beauty. So if you go to riverdaleartwalk.ca, there's a link there that takes you to the store. I encourage you to look at that. So, on to our exciting guest for today, Julia. So Julia I've known for a number of years, have a tremendous amount of respect for her. I love her art, very colorful, very much my color palette, so how can I not love it? But it's really more just about the looseness and the energy of the things she pieces are produced are amazing. She's a super cool woman, very accomplished, lived in actually like 4 different countries. She seems to have done a lot of things, and she's, I think, one of those fearless people who just kind of does, what she feels would be kind of an interesting thing to do, and she's kind of moved forward and been very successful. So absolutely we'll talk a little bit about her art. I'm sure she'll talk about, she does regular painting demos on Fridays at noon, but this is really more about the business of art. And she's one of these artists who's really taken her brand, she's built a strong brand, and she's really taken it to kind of the next step in terms of other collateral or prints or education sessions. So I'm going to let her talk about how great she is. And I'm going to add, let's see, how are you, Julia? So I know you're here because I saw you. Julia, can you just ask to be joined? Because I don't see, on the link where I'm supposed to have people join, I don't see you there, even though I know you are there. Oh, there you are. Okay, got it. Okay, so we're waiting for her, and here she comes. Hey, how are you?
There I am.
Good.
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Oh my God, it's so hot here today. So I'm sitting in my kitchen. My studio, actually, Art Alchemy is much more air conditioned, but I don't know what it is about this house. The top floor is always really hot.
Oh no, it's lovely down here at my house.
That's good. Yeah, you're near the water, right?
Yeah, so it's always a little cooler here.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, we're headed to the cottage later. I'm looking forward to kind of dipping my feet in the lake. Would be amazing.
Enjoy. How's my lighting? Is it changing? I'm okay?
I think you're good.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're a little quiet, but I think that could just be the way I'm hearing you.
I'll speak up.
Okay. So maybe do you want to talk a little bit about, for people that don't know you, a little bit about yourself and kind of the type of work you do, and then I really like to spend a lot of time talking more about the business of art, because I think that's something that you do tremendously well.
Sure. So I am, people know me the best as a Canadian landscape artist. Interestingly, I started off being a figurative artist. I just did people for many years, and we did, like in your lovely introduction, you said I lived in 4 different countries. And when I lived in Tanzania and Kenya, the people there were so beautiful, and the colors and the wraps and all the traditional clothing and the market scenes and just everything. It was amazing. But it was a dry and dusty land, obviously. So the landscapes there weren't what really gravitated me to them. So when we got back to Canada, I found that just experiencing all 4 seasons again, that it drew me to the color of spring and fall, and obviously, you know, summer, and even winter, all the colors of winter. So I kind of just twisted to landscape painting. So yeah, and most people know me as a landscape painter. So I have a studio in Hamilton, which is in flux right now. But I've had it almost 10 years. I've been working in Hamilton at a studio for almost 12 years now. And yeah, I've been building by doing shows and building my brand. You're right. That's what I've been
So I think
doing.
that's actually when I think I first, well, I sort of had known you at different shows, but I think one of the first times we actually started chatting is because I was actually thinking, I was working from home, my studio space, I just needed this space, and was looking for an external space, and was considering a retail location like yours, which I think is, if you haven't been down to Julia's store in Hamilton, it's so lovely. And that picture you posted recently with the bike and the yellow storefront, it was so beautiful. Of course, it's a huge endeavor, and you really need to kind of figure out, you're now obviously an artist and it's your artist studio, but then you're also a retailer, and you've got to be respectful for the retailers around you in that community. So
Yeah.
how was that kind of in terms of helping you build your presence, but also now that sounds like you're maybe starting to move away from that?
So Hamilton has something called an art crawl, and it happened monthly. And then in September of every month or every year, they had something called Super Crawl for the last 10 or 12 years. And I was working from home. I was working on my dining room table, and I was simply building, trying to figure out, at that time when I was trying to figure out even what to paint, where I would go, what I would do. I was slogging everything around to different shows and, you know, setting up tents and doing all that. And I was invited down to James Street by a lawyer friend of ours who had just purchased a painting. And he said, come see what we're doing. We're renovating this building to put in artist studios. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll go down. But why would I pay rent when my dining room is free?
Yeah.
And I'll go down because this guy's a lawyer, and he's going to know other lawyers, and he's going to tell them about my work, and maybe I'll sell more paintings. So I'll go down and I'll meet him. So then I met him, and the space was actually very, very cool. And he offered to let me use the space while they were still renovating for the next 3 months art crawls, just to see what it would be like, which was a really smart move on his part. And so I did that. And every art crawl, I sold enough to pay the potential rent that he was asking for a little studio in the building. So I went ahead, and that was my first jump into having a studio space. And I'm the type that if I have a gym membership, I go to the gym. So I don't have a gym membership because I don't want to go. So, and I would go to the studio because I was like, I'm not going to waste my money on this space and not use it. And that was one of the smartest things I did. And then, you know, being down there and being in the middle of it, I got to know all the people. We got to know the people that were renovating the building. I did get to know some of those other lawyers. And my husband is a contractor, so he actually got to come in and work on some of the building that I was presently in at the time. And then another lawyer approached us and said, I hear you're interested in renovating a building. And we were like, sure. So we partnered with him. We bought the building that my studio is in now and renovated it top to bottom. And so that began a really neat journey of having a storefront. And then the art crawls that happen every month, they were a great way. I used to kind of consider it a show. So, but I didn't have to slog my stuff. I didn't have to set up. But every week, every art crawl, I would clean up. I would get it all ready. for people to come in. And over the years, many, many people have come in and seen me there. And obviously having the front window on James Street North, which is a bit of a hub now for art.
Pretty amazing advertising.
It was pretty amazing, and people would come by and they'd make an appointment, you know, they'd stop. But I am a very bad employee. If you ever heard me speak about that, I am a good entrepreneur, but a very bad employee. So even
Isn't that often the case?
yeah, but so even having my own studio and thinking that I want to have hours was so confining that the thing that I would hear a lot of people would walk in and go, well, I can't believe you're here. You're never here. And I'm like, well, okay. But all of this work that I've just done that you see in here, I do here. So it's just a matter of I'm not here when you're here.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that. So, I mean, and that was ultimately the conversation. It was a combination for me of, you know, I knew that if I was going to have a space like you have on James Street, it's a space that it's a street that gets a lot of traffic. So from where I live, that would be Yonge Street. And so first of all, the rents were really, really expensive to try and figure out how to actually really combine the studio space and how much studio artists are willing to spend on a studio space with a retail space. But ultimately, it's exactly what you said. I thought, oh, I don't think I want to be committed to those hours. And like you said, you can't have one of those storefronts that's closed because that's not really fair to the other retailers on the street, right? So
well,
that's my move into Art Alchemy, where I can have shows if I want, but it's my own space.
And that's exactly what I felt. So I actually hired an assistant. Her name is Liz. And for the past, I think I've had Liz for 3 years. We did have solid Saturday hours, 11 to 4 Saturdays. And oh my gosh, that has been like life-saving for me, because I used to think I was an extrovert, and I've learned that I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert, but I'm not a shy introvert. So if I'm at a party or I'm I'm talkative, I think I'm fun, but
you're always fun.
but I do like to spend a lot of time by myself. So I would find on James Street, people would stop, they'd stop outside the window and they'd be like, look at this artwork. I love this artist. And that was always lovely to hear, but I'd be like, don't come in, don't come in, don't come in.
Well, and I agree, because I'm a pretty high extrovert, and I love people, which is for me one of the reasons that I decided I wanted to have a studio like Art Alchemy, where there's not just me in the studio, there's 4 or 5 other people.
Right.
But I would find it very frustrating when you're in that zone and you're really producing something to have to sort of stop, talk to someone, and be patient with them as they, you know, tell you their life story and they want to buy something, and that's the role of a salesperson. But then to flip that switch again and be a creative, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Be conducive to painting.
So interestingly, during the week, Monday to Friday, I may get, if I'm there, you know, if I'm there and they see that I'm open, I may get maybe 1 or 2 people that walk in. It's not like a heavy onslaught of all these people on James Street coming in. They walk by, they comment on whatever I have in the window. And I used to find a lot of, it was just traffic who were driving by and stopped at the stoplight. They would look at it, and then they'd call me later. I got phone calls. I was driving by, I saw this painting, you know. So Liz was awesome on a Saturday, because honestly, I could get a painting ready, have it all wrapped, and say, pick it up on Saturday. And, you know, people, and if they wanted to make an appointment with me, which a lot of people, you know, when they're buying a very expensive painting, they would like to make an appointment with the artist, and that's fine. And I would meet them at the studio, even on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon or whenever. But it was just so nice to have a time that the store was open, people could rely on the hours, they could come in and browse. So now where do you want to go next in this conversation?
Well, I think now you're sort of thinking that the store has kind of maybe done what it's done for you in terms of your career path, and you're looking at having your own studio space now at home, right?
Yeah. So it's a scary thought, because it's like, am I shooting myself in the foot? I've built this brand. I have this store. People know where it is. It's been an anchor, I think, on James Street. People know it. but I've always been saying, I mean, I'm certainly not retirement age or anything like that, but I've got 5 grandbabies. I've got 5 of my own kids with husbands and wives. So there's, now we're at 15 kids. And my biggest hero in my life has always been my mother-in-law. My mom, it's a bit of a story. My mom passed away when I was 13. She had cancer, and my dad had been an alcoholic. It wasn't like the best time and so when I was 17, I met my husband, and then I met his parents, who became my wonderful parents. And, as all the kids started having babies, Deanie was just always around and available. And I know I'm not always available, and I have to work. Deanie was really blessed to be able to, she spent her life as a housewife supporting my father-in-law, but it was more than that. She was a support to all of us, all of her kids. She was always available. And my dream has always been, if the kids call and say, we want to come over, we have a pool in our backyard, we're by the beach, I want to just wash my brush out and go have, go do the thing.
Keep your priorities really straight.
And that's where I've been leaning. So the whole COVID thing, I kind of grabbed at the beginning of it, I kind of grabbed that first week as an opportunity to work from home. Because, March break, you're thinking, oh, it's maybe school won't be in for 2 more weeks. And nobody knew it was going to turn into.
And you were pretty fast on that. Like, I think you were probably one of the first that I saw that it was starting to do the painting online, but also just that really regular, expected timeline.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I always thought it'd be 3 to 5 years when I gave up my studio, but I knew that I was going to give it up. This is the life I kind of want for myself now, is to be able to work and then be available when my kids need me. And my husband is the same way. He doesn't know when he'd ever retire, but when he does, I'm sure all he's going to do is have coffee with people. He's just when.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, he's
okay. So I think that's probably a good segue into, so in terms of being able to kind of divest yourself of some things that have done what they've needed to in terms of the store. Obviously, artists never really retire. We'll probably be painting when we're 98, right?
Yeah.
But you're kind of doing more things online, the store, and I think you're working on a series that's kind of more about the business of art. So I'd like to talk to you about, how do you kind of approach that business of art in partnership with being an artist? And I know you and I have talked about this a lot, where absolutely, you need to be in the studio. That's not really a question, and I'm the same way. But I also really love and crave that intellectual challenge of the business piece of it, right? Which I think you do as well. But you're way further ahead than I am in terms of capitalizing on your brand and extending your brand with other items, and then this new initiative you've got with your business of art.
Well, so I'm actually going to be filming next week a video series, and it is the business of art, and it's going to be starting at the top of building your brand, building your style, building your practice, and then how to advertise, how to get into galleries, all of those things. So I'm going to be putting together, it's a 6-session video series I'm going to be starting next week. Hopefully it'll be out by Christmas time. I'm not sure how long it's going to take to put together, but I've always loved the idea of making money, and it's fun for me.
Which is so rare for an artist to actually, I mean, I think we all want to make money, but I think it's rare and very refreshing to have an artist that actually says that that's part of your mandate. And I agree. Like, I have a revenue goal that I work on, and of course COVID modified my revenue goal a little bit this year, but it's still pretty aggressive, and that's what kind of keeps you going.
It's what's missing in art school. I think a lot of artists hope to get discovered, but they're painting in their basement, and they're not doing what it takes to get their work out there. And I think you and I, when you were on my Instagram live, we talked about this concept of artists were showing off, right? Like, who was the first person that paint or made something creative, and who was the first person that said, I just want that to look at. Like, I'm going to go and buy that from you. And I think I was thinking about that with the One of a Kind show. You know, we set up and it's so beautiful, and we go in there. Basically, all 500 artisans are there to say, "Hey, check me out. Check out my stuff." Right? Like, and we need to learn how to check out our stuff. Everything's design in the world. We all enjoy design and fine lines and color and everything, and surrounding ourselves with beauty. And it's just a matter of learning the business side and capitalizing on that. So I've always been one to, you know, I can't, my kids have said, Mom, you seem to be just ahead of the trend. If it's going to be pink next year, you seem to do it in the fall and it comes out in the spring. And I don't quite understand how that happens, but it seems to. But I do understand using social media, using advertising, and creating the desire, which is something I'll be talking about in the video.
I think it's actually, I think it's more than that too, though, because I think part of it as well is, like, in terms of saying that, you know, you can see these trends before they actually happen. Some of that, I think, is having the faith and the trust that it's just like, you know, I believe in my own ability to create, and I have to believe that if this is what I'm going to do, then the people that follow me and like my work are going to be like that as well. But I think that it's also about sometimes stepping out of, like, being an artist can be very artists can be very self-absorbed, right? And the reality is, it's about, you know, my work and what I'm thinking, and I'm sharing my expression, and I'm using art as a catharsis for my own opinions and my own emotions. And I think that it does benefit artists to step out of our own footprints and look at the people who are interested in purchasing our art. And I think it's such a blessed thing for me to think that I've created something and now someone wants it on their wall and they're living with it. And their grandchildren are going to fight hopefully over who gets it in the will. That's an incredible honor as an artist. But I think to do that, you have to also respect the way that your customers make their decisions and what they want and what they're looking for, and helping to make that easy.
Oh,
some
for
of
sure.
that's in color, some of that's in conversation.
I remember the first, when I came back from Africa, I was painting people, and I didn't find a big response. So I had to find something that I enjoyed that fed me as far as my expression. And I remember I went to a show, and I had everything from watercolors to African Maasai warriors to flowers. And, you know, I think I looked like a group show all on my own, right? And but there was one particular tree that I had painted in a specific style, and I had a client who was like, "Ooh, I like this. Can you paint me this big?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." And then
And I just want to interrupt there, because I'm guessing from where you're saying it, because that doesn't happen to me before, where you're like, "Oh, absolutely, I can do that." And meanwhile, you're like, "Holy shit, what did I just agree to? I've never done
and I don't know how much to charge. And I remember it was a big painting. I think it was a 3x5 vertical, and I charged her $1,500. I said, "Is $1,500 going to be okay?" She's like, "That's great." And we made the deal, and she walked away, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, just, you know, like, what happened just happened, and this is so exciting. It's going to be great." And I started painting this tree. And other people, that I was in the studio that I had taken above a coffee shop, that first one that lawyer had offered. I was in there, and they were doing a monthly art crawl, and people just started coming in and zooming, like just honing in on this painting that I was doing, and like, wow. And I'm like, okay, well, this is getting a lot of reaction. So then I started exploring it more. And I love thinking it's not necessarily like that you get stuck in a subject matter, but the subject matter can be expressed in any way. It's not really about the subject matter. People like landscapes and they like trees, but they're liking the way I'm expressing it.
Yeah,
so,
and your color palette.
Yeah, and I'm very Canadian, and Canadians are well versed in, like, the group of 7, and they're well versed in what they like, and they simply responded to it. So based on that response, the entrepreneurial part of me said, "Oh, this might be the road to follow." And I did, and it was super fun. And it's I think now that style, I think you can say that's a Veenstra.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think when you're saying people drive by and they say, oh, I saw your stuff in the window. I've had the same thing when things have been in Petrov. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. You can get to the point where you're recognizable.
Yeah.
But I think the thing I wanted to go back to, because I think it's one of those things that entrepreneurs and successful artists will do, which some other artists will not do, is this, oh, I see that somebody wants something like this, so now I'm going to paint in that direction. And I think there's a thought that somehow that's selling out to the man, right? But I do think that the way I see that, and I think the way you see that as well, is that in actual fact, it's a new challenge to take my work in a direction that I may not have been thinking about before.
Yeah.
And those challenges constantly push you to become a better artist. And,
Yeah.
you know, one of the things I miss about the outdoor shows is all those conversations. And you hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. And some people are just insulting and, you know, oh, I do abstract because I can't do anything else. That's fun. But other people come up with comments. And you're like, there's something to consider there.
Yeah.
I may do it, I may not, but I think it's always worth considering.
Yeah. And I found even in the entrepreneurial part, there are some like little paintings that I will do and I'll call them grocery money. These are grocery money paintings. These are what cover the dentist. This is what covers this, and this is what covers maybe the dinner I want to go out to. And you have to be thinking that way, because if I make this small painting that the masses love and I can sell it
and can afford, yeah,
and afford, I don't have to work at a coffee shop or like at Tim Hortons to pay my rent.
Totally agree.
Right?
I think that, yeah, and I think that's those kind of those bread and butter pieces too, are fun to do. I know I use my little treasures as a sketchbook. I work through different ideas and stuff.
Yep.
You know, I think that the other thing is that it allows you to bring people on board even when they can't afford your larger pieces.
Yeah.
So, and a friend of mine actually calls my little treasures gateway drug. People buy the little ones and they like it and they kind of gradually move up, right?
My square foot show that I've run for the past 7 years has been very, very successful. We have a lineup down the street, and I usually bring in about 180 to 200 paintings, and I think last year I sold 130 of them in 3 days. And
I've been part of your square foot show for a number of years, which has been fabulous. But I remember before I was in there, I was like, that looks like a successful show. It's a new market for me. How do I get in there? Like, you know, like that's kind of the conversation that sort of starts to happen, right?
yeah, but I totally would tell people as they were shopping, just get ready, because this is your gateway drug. You're going to get originals now, and you're not going to go back. That said, I do have a very successful print line.
Yes. Yeah, talk about that a little bit. And how do you kind of sell your prints without jeopardizing or cannibalizing the actual original art pieces? Because that's often the question comes up.
I know that question comes up, and I actually never have really understood it. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to offer something that people can afford, that you want to leave out a whole group of people that might not be able to afford an original. Why you would want to not give them something that's beautiful and that they love, especially if, like you said earlier, you're honored that they want to be part of your life, right? That they want to have something that's yours. And I often ask people, like, are you listening to Bono on your CD? If that's even showing my age, CD.
Your 8-track cassette.
Are you live stream, or is Bono sitting in your back seat of the car playing the tune because you won't have anything but an original?
Yeah. Right?
Because it might be, that argument might break down eventually, but that's how I think. I think a reproduction is a reproduction, and people know it. They know it's not an original, but it's really quite a blessing. Like when people come and pick up the prints that I've created for them, and they're just so excited, that they're just as excited to get that print as they are to get an original. But they often say, we're saving for an original. So again, it is, I think that's a really good point. The business of art, we're doing stepping stones, right? Like they're stepping up to that.
Marjolaine Vanderhart is on in a couple of weeks, and she also sells a lot of her work, prints as well. But I think both you and she have also been really smart about it, in the sense, I know people who have done prints, and it ends up taking a lot of their personal time if they're printing them and matting them, but you've actually outsourced all that stuff, so you don't have to touch it, right?
Right. So I have a great photographer And talking about photography, when I started photographing my work and documenting my work at the very beginning, I got a lot of phone calls from a few galleries that said, "Ooh, we like the new direction you're going in on your website. All your new work is quite wonderful." And I'm like, well, it's just I didn't shoot it with my phone, right? Like
Yeah, same work.
it's professionally documented. So number one, you have to document your work. And number two, so you have to get a good photographer who knows how to document your work. And I'm actually blessed right now because my photographer is also my printer. And so he can look at the work, photograph the work, and make sure that the files are ready for printing. So I do outsource that. I pay him to do that. And he also has a shipping business. So he also can mail everything for me. So these are things you pay for, but it becomes a residual income that allows you the freedom to be in your studio more creative.
And obviously you would not continue to pay for it if it didn't ultimately make you more money than you're paying, right? But I think that is a barrier to some in terms of doing printing, is trying to figure out that whole system of photographing, printing, shipping, and delivery, which I think is a reason why people don't.
Yeah, I also outsourced the creative aspect, like the making of my website and the whole WooCommerce thing. I don't know how to do that. If I knew how to do that and I enjoyed doing it, maybe I could have done it, but I don't know how to do that. So I have a firm that I work with who put up the images, they create in the WooCommerce, they've set it up so that the order goes directly to my printer and me, like we all know, it's like a little group. It's quite a well-honed little system.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and maybe if you're interested, if you can share maybe that contact information, I can share that out to people too, because I think that's interesting for people.
Yeah. Anybody can ask me anything about that.
And so, is there anything else you kind of like pieces of information you think with around the business of art that would be a good starting point, like for people that are kind of just starting out, they're at that point where they have done some shows, they've got some people behind them are trying to figure out how to get to that next step. What kind of advice would you give to them?
Number one, keep painting, like just or creating whatever it is you're doing. Keep working. Get to work. Make yourself hours. So if it's not your full-time job, you need to carve out where it is, and then if you can slowly get to the point where what you're selling makes enough that you can go full-time, you have to evaluate all that, because if you're getting benefits from your job, you're going to lose your benefits. You're going to do, you have to get to the point where you're making, so it really is a business plan. It's more than just, I'm going to paint and I hope. You have to walk. One of the things I do about, so we'll just talk a little bit about doing shows. Shows are awesome, but not all shows are for you.
Exactly.
You may go to a show and it seems to be well attended, but it's all oil paintings of old masters type work. Your contemporary work will not fit there. And you have to be, so I always advise take a year and go to every show you can and see if you want to be involved. And don't be afraid to pay the fees. The fees are expensive, and they can be, daunting.
You need to make sure your investment is well researched. Yeah,
that's right.
I think the other thing too is, and reach out to other artists. Like I have people reaching out to me all the time about shows, and there are some shows where I'll say, hey, you know what? A lot of my friends had a lot of success at that show. I'm an abstract painter. It's not an abstract crowd, so it's not worth it for me. But I think there's two parts to that. I think it's good to be able to reach out to other artists and share your experiences. And I would say if an artist reaches out to you as well, try and be really authentic about, about helping. We have a question here. How do you deal with the fear of being repetitive? How do you plan your collections?
Repetitive, I don't mind. Well,
in actual fact, too, customers want repetition, and since I find I often get commissions from people that have been following me for 3 or 4 years. So if I was now painting something completely different than I was 3 years ago, I've lost that client, but I've also lost that ability to kind of bring people along with my work.
Yep, and I have clients that'll pull up something from my website and say this original is sold, but I would like something similar. Yeah. And I have no problem. I think about how often did Van Gogh paint those sunflowers, right? He did it, all sorts of things. And collections are another thing. And I find, like with my galleries, I find the different curators collect different things. For me, like you're in Petra, and I have found recently that Petra, I gave them my islands and my things like that, and which sell so fast, and they just didn't move at Petra. And then the curator there said, let's try some of your florals. And I brought in 3 florals, and they sold them all immediately.
Yeah.
So
well,
it's
like that's another part too. We're talking about the strategies. We sort of talked a lot about fairs and as artists doing our own promotion. And I don't know about you, but I know for me personally, like, you know, the representation I have with galleries and agents is a hugely important part of my strategy. And those galleries are partners. And so we talk about, you know, you as a gallery know your audience better than I do. Obviously, you're attracted to my work. You think you can sell my work, but help me to create a collection for you that's going to, that you're going to find is easier to sell. And I think that part is really important. And getting back to the repetition, this is where I kind of feel like, for me, even though the pieces might look like they're the same to other people who are looking at them, every piece has its own energy. Every piece has its own creation process, which makes it for me very different. And it's fun to explore every painting individually. So
yeah, like I'm thinking right away of Elizabeth Lenny and her little girl jumping off the dock.
Mm-hmm.
She has painted that painting, I don't know how many. If Libby's on, she could tell us how often she's painted a child jumping off the dock. But I remember her saying, I'm not done with it yet.
Yeah.
Like there's actually an like I'm not done. There's shapes in here that are attracting me. There's colors, there's energy. I'm just not done. I've painted the same tree more than once. It's just a matter of a different composition, different shape, different, you know, it's everything. But I wanted to talk about galleries, and this is a tip for any artists that are just starting to get in there. Do not undercut your galleries. As much as you
absolutely
think,
not.
you know, as much as you think,
it's like sleeping around on your husband. You just don't do that.
It's
a relationship that's based on trust.
Yeah, you've made a deal. A client cannot come to you and get it cheaper than they can at the gallery. That is the hugest mistake. You will
well,
burn.
I think too, I often have clients, especially in Toronto, where they'll come to me and say, "Oh, I saw your work at Petrov, but you know, if I come to you directly, then you know, can I get a discount or whatever?" And even if you say no, it's the same fee as if you go through the gallery. But I will actually then loop back into the gallery, because I think that's also a client. I think in some cases they try and be helpful to the artist, knowing that the gallery gets a percentage, but I think they also don't recognize that galleries have huge costs.
They earned it,
and they promote you, and they have their, you know, they have shows where they pay for all that stuff, and that's part of the deal. So I actually always loop back to the gallery and let them know, hey, this is your client.
They've earned it.
Yeah, I think you're just being I know there's some artists that don't really like the gallery. They don't like to give the percentage, but for me, I think that it's about increasing your annuity streams. You know, like, well, you've got your prints and you've got a whole bunch of different places where you're making money that you can actually then become a full-time artist.
Yeah, in the last few years, I haven't done like a million shows. And what I look at a gallery is I didn't have to slog my stuff and stand in the heat and the rain, and I got a check from them this week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think I will personally always do both, because I really love working with galleries. I think it expands your reach. Like, you know, I can't be in Stratford and Whistler and Naples and stuff and England, all over the place. I also, because I'm an extrovert, I love the outdoor shows. I don't love the schlepping. I love to outsource that. But I love the hanging. I love the energy. I love talking to the other artists in the community. And I find for me too, that's also where I have an ability to talk to my customers and kind of get a sense of what's resonating with them and what's not. Yeah, Wendy Wacko was on actually, and she's Mountain Galleries. And I just wanted to sort of say she's saying a good relationship with the gallery is a full partnership.
And I've tried to write Wendy so many times. I don't know if I have the wrong.
Okay, Wendy, now you can see you meet Julia.
Write me. But one of the things I might do now that if I'm trying to develop now, get permits to change a shed into my own studio on my property, and I might just explore a few more shows again. So I spent many years doing shows, and then I had my studio, so I backed up and did more galleries. So now I might throw an extra show in there and treat it more like a vacation. So say my husband can come with me and set up
Oh,
with
totally.
me and things like that. Like,
Travel for art.
yeah,
That's why I went to Barcelona.
and one of the reasons why I wanted to move home too is because I was actually feeling guilty for the community on James Street. Like if I go away to visit my grandson in Kelowna for 2 weeks, it's closed.
Yeah.
Right? And it's an essential part of that community for people to be open for a draw for when people come down, they want to
It's
be
not really fair. And I think that's the other thing too, and having good relationships with your galleries as well. And this has been especially true with COVID and all of the outdoor shows being canceled, is that, you know, we still have the ability to be able to kind of know that they're working on our behalf to sell the work. And I find right now I'm way busier doing gallery work than I am in commissions, I guess, than just building my own inventory.
Yep. Yep. And I appreciate those galleries. So you got to get your prices to the point where you're comfortable with the 50%.
Yeah.
Where that makes you happy, where you're there. So.
Yeah, and I think, and again, not just understanding there, it's, you know, it's two parts. Like I find often artists will kind of say, well, I'm producing the work. It's like, yeah, you're producing the work, but they're bringing all of the other pieces. What's it say? Consider inviting one of your galleries to go to the show with you and share the costs. Yeah, I have actually approached a couple of galleries when we were looking at doing some of the affordable art fairs or shows in, well, I was supposed to do that in Barcelona. It ended up not working out, so I went by myself. But I think that's a really smart way of doing it. And I think that it's kind of, it's nice also to be sometimes within a booth in a larger art fair that's other people's work as well. Okay, Wendy, I'm totally taking you up on that. Wendy Wacko from Mountain Galleries, who does represent me.
Look
I love the
what's
work
happening,
and I love working with her.
See what's happening? Doing a deal right here on the live Instagram.
That's right.
Wendy, I want to come too.
We'll go. We'll get all the really cool people together, the fun people, and we'll go. It's one of the reasons I really love doing actually China, to say too, which was with an organization, and it allowed me to, you know, well, travel to China with my sister, which was super cool. But meet some great people and great artists from around the world, and so that's been really neat too, because it expands, you know, your I don't know, your network, right? And so we were talking yesterday about, you know, it's Indigenous month, and I guess Global Indigenous Days in August. And I was saying, well, I know a couple of Indigenous artists in Australia. Like, it would be really cool to get them together and do a Zoom call and connect artists of the world.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, Paula White Diamond. Hi, Paula. She's interested as well. Shark Tank. That would be fun.
I'm sure they really enjoyed our conversation about don't cheat your gallery.
It's a good thing we said that. I'm thinking I need to have Wendy on and talk about her concept around Shark Tank. That could be kind of cool.
Well, I'm actually Paula White. I'm actually inviting, doing a video, part of my video series next week. We've arranged that I'm going to go interview Paula because Paula was one of my first galleries. She found my work at a show at I think it was the Artist Project. And so then I had to figure out being in her gallery and who else she curated. Did I fit? Obviously, she thought I fit. And so I'm going to be interviewing her for my series next week. So that'll be good. Yeah.
I mean, and Paula's a beautiful artist in her own right, too. And I think that's actually brings up another really interesting point, because a lot of times early emerging artists will, how do I get into a gallery? And it's like, well, you need to court the gallery, but I think you have to also understand that there, like with art shows, there are some galleries that your work fits in, and there's some that it just doesn't. And you might love a gallery, but
that's right,
it just might not work, right? The fit isn't there. And if the gallery doesn't feel that they can sell your work, it's disingenuous for them to bring you on board.
That's right. Marissa Sweet is on, and she said we were booth buddies, and we were booth buddies. That's where I met her. But it was at a show where it was all traditional oil painted realism. And I can't remember exactly what Marissa did way back then, because that's not what she does now. But I was like stuck out like a sore thumb. Like, people would actually be like, "Why are you here?" Like, actual people walking around, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I thought it was a good show."
Yeah. Well, I was like that with the Oakville Art in the Park. I grew up in Oakville, so I figured it's perfect. I know lots of people in Oakville, and it's the only show I've ever done that I've sold nothing. Like not even a 6-inch by
And
6-inch.
for me, Oakville, when I did it, it was one of my most successful shows.
Oh, I know a ton of artists that do very well. So that's why when people call me, I'm like, well, if you're an abstract painter, I wouldn't recommend it. If
Yep.
you do landscape, especially colorful landscapes, then go for it, right? Because
Yep.
and that's just, again, the importance of understanding your market and where your market's going to be.
Are you trying to get this to IGTV? Are we under 45 minutes? Because it won't go to IGTV if we go
We're
over.
at 45 minutes.
Stop it.
Okay. Love you.
Love you. Bye.
Thanks so much. Okay. All right. Bye, guys.